So it's running pretty much like the first one did. The difference, of course, is this is for the two candidates for Metro Council President. I want to introduce Christensen and Juan Gonzalez. Please give them a warm welcome. Well, let's start. I want to give each candidate 2 minutes, just kind of as an opening statement, and your thoughts about the position. So we'll start with Chris here.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming, and hopefully you can hear me okay. Usually that's not a problem. I want to thank first Indivisible.org for sponsoring the event. Voter participation is the most important part of this entire process because we're here to serve each and every one of you. So thank you, all of you, to come out on this beautiful day, to listen to what we have to say, and to hopefully be able to solidify your vote. The ballots went out today, so we're going to be in the crunch time here. My name is Chris Christensen. I'm a candidate for the Metro Council President position. It's a very important position. Right now that position is unfilled. The former Metro Council President resigned the position early, so it's sort of like a ship without a rudder right now, and I hope to right the ship and get the ship back on course, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. A little bit about my background. I grew up here in Portland, Oregon, went to Chapman Elementary School, graduated from Jesuit High School. I've been in the mortgage and real estate business, as Alex has for some time. Just retired last year, so taking some time to look to see what my future is here, and just like many of you, very concerned about affordability and what's going on in our region. That's one of the reasons I ran. I was a candidate for U.S. Congress from Washington County, representing Washington County in 2020, and a candidate for the U.S. Senate in 2022. So I've got a somewhat of a political background. I've also been a lobbyist on behalf of state voting interests here in the metropolitan region, and I've also been a volunteer with Habitat for Humanity in Washington County and also the Oregon Food Bank. So I come in with an independent outsider's point of view. I come in with a clear slate. I don't have any preconceived notions about the position, and I don't have any prearranged alliances. So I think that the fact that I've come in with an independent point of view and the ability to scrutinize things as they come on behalf of the people I represent, is the most important thing. So I'll say just in a couple of words, my campaign strategy is going to be accountable and to be pragmatic. So I look forward to your questions.
Juan Carlos Church, I just want to make sure you both noted that your clock timer's up here on this wall, right up there. So I failed to mention that when you started. Yeah. So Juan Carlos.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Juan Gonzalez. I'm running to be your Metro Council President. I've served as your Metro Councilor for the last 7 years, and so for me it's always really nice to be back in Forest Grove. Born and raised in this community. I grew up in Cornelius, went to Forest Grove School District, and so for me, kind of being in this area, I get a lot of nostalgia, not seeing Maggie's buns, thinking about the time I played cello for the Forest Grove High School Orchestra, and in general, just a lot of love for this community because I got to grow up and see the families, the farm workers, the small business owners, people that build this incredible community, to have the opportunity to now run for this seat, to continue to represent you, and hopefully work on the most important issues that are impacting not just greater Portland, but Oregon. And I want to talk about that because our region right now is facing some real challenges. We have housing affordability crisis that is straining working families, that is making it difficult for people to belong here, to live here. That to me is a policy decision that we can and that we must change. We are also seeing major cuts to our transit service, to our transportation system, to the infrastructure that makes this one of the most incredible places to live and to move and to just engage with our community here. And also as someone that has worked with the Latino community, with our local nonprofit infrastructure, incredibly angry, concerned, frustrated with the lawlessness from Washington, D.C., targeting immigrant communities, vulnerable communities. And I think that right now we need leaders that have experience, that have the ability to stand up for those things, but also to articulate and implement a clear vision for the greater Portland that we should have. And that's exactly why I am running to be your Metro Council President. For the last few years as your Metro Councilor, I've helped build over 5,000 units of affordable housing. I I have worked on smart growth efforts to try and support housing development, jobs, and I know the timer's going off here, but I want to wrap up my intro by saying I just became a dad last summer. I have a 10-month-old baby girl that my wife and I are raising. And when I think about the future, when I think about what I want to leave for her, I ask myself the question that I think a lot of you ask yourselves about maybe yourselves or about your kids or about your nieces and your nephews. Are they going to be able to afford to buy a home here when they grow up? Are they going to have meaningful opportunities? Are our schools going to prepare them to have world-class leadership and opportunities? And I think right now the answer to some of those questions is hard to say absolutely yes, we will. And I have this conviction, this drive. I want to leave something for my daughter that I'm proud of, and I want to leave something for future generations that I'm proud of all Oregonians. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so we definitely want it to be a family-friendly event tonight, but I will kind of keep track of folks' time that goes over to make sure other folks get that back if they need to. The first ticket is 162-5717.
Yeah, my particular interest is in housing, and I know there's been some talk about, there's been a lot of money thrown at homelessness and affordable housing, but a lot of times we're frustrated sometimes as citizens because it seems like we're not thinking outside the box. Like there's a wide range between sleeping on the sidewalk and living in a McMansion, or even an apartment building. And I think I'd like to know what you can bring to these solutions, which are like building tiny houses and teaching job skills and maybe start a park for them, or get a warehouse and put a kitchen and bathrooms in there and showers so people can at least live with a little dignity, or so car camping isn't so difficult. And so I think we really need to think outside the box here and not just go with traditional solutions because they're expensive and slow, and I'd like to see some of that. I wonder if you could bring some ideas to that and tell me what you're thinking on that.
Carlos?
Great. Well, thank you so much for the question. I think I read your name tag. I think is that Sean. Sean, thank you for the question. You know, I think about housing and housing affordability a lot, housing production in general, and you know, since the Great Recession, even before then, we've not built hundreds of thousands of units of housing from our own forecast that we've said we need to do to keep this place affordable and for families to actually have the opportunity to belong here. And I'm going to be really honest, folks. I think that is a result of generations of policy decisions that have made it very hard to build here, that have made it very hard to grow here. And one of the most important things that I think Metro Council, especially as this long-range planning organization for the greater Portland area has, is to ask hard questions about why that is. Earlier this year, I worked with my peers to create a housing production accelerator fund. We allocated $5 million from our own reserves to help local governments like the city of Forest Grove and others look at their permitting, review their code, to make sure that the values that we have as Oregonians, because I do fundamentally believe that as Oregonians we are a place that wants to be welcoming, a place that wants to see families thrive, a place that wants to see elders retire with dignity. And at the same time, we make it very difficult to build the housing and the opportunities to do that. At Metro, I've been a champion of smart growth, missing middle. We have worked on regional housing coordination strategies, you name it. But when I think about it, I worry that so much of our local governments, and frankly at the state level as well, we focus so much on process and process and process, and very little do we get to the outcome. And what I'm proposing is a generational shift in our politics. I'm someone that believes that government needs to deliver for working people. And when we do not give our government the capacity and the ability to do that, that is when we create these problems and these crises. So when it comes to homelessness, I think the primary cause of homelessness is the high cost of housing. I want every Oregonian to have a safe place to rest their head at night, but I also want people to have the opportunity to buy a home, to have a rent that is affordable. Anyway, I'll cede my time. Thank you.
Great. Well, this is a question that's right up my alley. As I mentioned, I have a background in developing affordable housing for market rate housing, working with developers to be able to provide housing solutions. That's a great question. You hear the term affordable housing, and it's a loaded term because there's affordable rental housing, there's affordable home ownership, and home ownership can be affordable at several different levels. We want it to be affordable for everybody. It's unacceptable that people live on the streets, and up until about 2019, Portland was a great place to live, and you could buy a house relatively affordably. So we want to get back to that. Some of the pragmatic and practical solutions I have to both speed up accelerate the rate of housing construction and to make housing more affordable is to work with modular housing developers. Modular housing developers are a great way to build essentially factory-driven units. It could be assembled on site at a much lower cost and a much faster rate. Another thing I'd like to be able to provide is the opportunity through deregulation for homeowners to be able to provide accessory dwelling units. That's if you have a large lot, you can build a second home or build a home over your garage. San Diego is a great example. I look for national examples. They've got a program now where you can separately deed an accessory dwelling unit, so you'd be able to either rent that out to someone or to be able to sell that. I definitely don't believe in expanding the urban growth boundary unless it's absolutely necessary, and that is the will of the people. I believe in urban infill development, and I believe that we have a lot of opportunity to do that in the metro region right now without having to look at expanding the urban growth boundary. I've gotten some pushback on that, quite frankly, but I believe in something I call the catalyst effect. The catalyst effect is when a developer comes in and, as you said, converts a warehouse, it converts a dilapidated building into something that can now be sold as affordable housing units for sale at market-driven, maybe let's say 80 to 120% of area median income. That's a great market-driven solution. We shouldn't rely on the government to build our housing for us. We need deregulation to be able to provide housing that developers can build for people. We'll get much faster results, much better housing units, and much lower cost.
Thank you. All right, 1625723.
So, to the last candidates, I asked a question about infrastructure and how it affects homelessness. I would like to add on to that. What do you think the role of Metro is in addressing the conditions that people facing homelessness but unable, for whatever reason, to get into housing are? What are we doing for people on the street, and how can you help them?
All right, Chris and Todd.
Okay, great question. I love your shirt, by the way. For those of you who don't see, he's got a NASA shirt, so I was really impressed by the Artemis mission. That gave us a lot of hope for the future. To answer your question, again, homelessness is not something we should accept. In a word, I would say the biggest challenge we have right now is bureaucracy. As many of you know, there is the Supportive Housing Services program. That's also a tax. It's a tax that each one of you hardworking people pay out of your pocket to be able to help other people. While its intentions are good, I don't believe in enabling people. I believe in empowering people. So what I'd like to be able to do is provide opportunities for people to get a new start in life, to be able to be empowered to overcome the challenges that they have, and that's something that we can do with private-public partnerships to be able to do that. A great example would be not just provide a low-barrier affordable housing project where we move people into, but one that has job training on site and one that has active involvement with the community to be able to help get those people a new start. I truly believe in people, and I think that the most important thing that I would be able to do is to provide a fresh look at some of the programs that are out there. I've also suggested a very, very innovative program that would help people get a new fresh start outside of the Portland area. I call it the DOOR program, and it would be a real chance to give people a chance to really get a fresh start. So that's one of the programs that I've planned to develop in addition to some of the programs that are already working. But what I'm very concerned about, and you saw this recently in the news, where there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse, there are hundreds of millions of dollars available for affordable housing and for homelessness, and those problems continue to exacerbate. They get worse, not better. I'm here to make things get better.
Thank you. One comment?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think the housing crisis and folks that are living on our streets is a humanitarian problem that we've allowed to grow, and something that breaks my heart every single day. So David, thank you so much for the question. Well, SHS, the Supportive Housing Services measure, I just want to really clarify, it's really important to me. It is a tax on the wealthiest Oregonians, the most profitable companies in Greater Portland. Less than 10% of individuals pay SHS in Greater Portland, and around 7% of companies in Greater Portland pay that tax. So it's definitely not a tax that working people and it's beginning to address what some of these core fundamental issues are, and what's proliferating and exasperating our housing crisis, which is wealth inequality and the lack of families to be able to afford housing. I will say that over and over and over again. The primary cause of homelessness is the cost of housing. And when people are homeless, that is where our state and our region has not been able to live up to the values that I think a lot of us have. We've not been able to integrate healthcare funding, addiction recovery services, the behavioral health systems, and that is something that I have been honestly raging against the machine for the last 6 years. So I want to talk about some of the major overhauls that we just achieved, that I just accomplished as your Metro Councilor. SHS is halfway through its implementation. It's a 10-year program. We just completed year 5. The Metro Council has changed the oversight structure. Before we had 2 oversight committees. Now we have a single oversight committee that brings healthcare, the justice system, the governor's office, all of the counties, the major cities in the region together to begin to solve this problem, create a truly integrated regional program that helps people get off of the streets. And the peers on the Metro Council have trusted me to chair that, and I'm chairing that committee now. We just had our first meeting last month. Our next meeting is exactly 1 week from today. And we have this charge of making sure that our homeless system is actually delivering the outcomes and the results that we need. So I do agree that there are some underlying issues that we have not addressed. I have a clear plan, clear work, and frankly, working with the most important decision makers and influencers in the system to make sure that we achieve that. Thank you for the question.
All right, thank you. Next question, 1625721.
Senate Bill 1586, which was the bill to expand high-tech in our area. First it was going to be, well, no, I don't think at first it specified what kind of high-tech, and later there was an amendment that cut out data centers. So we chopped out the data centers, yay, but the high-tech that's remaining is still of concern. Particularly looking at longevity. Maybe it has a little bit better longevity for employment than the data centers do, but still, look at Tektronix, for example. It's not quite the vibrant technology that it used to be, and it was the be-all at the time. So what's your feelings on 1586 and infringing upon the lands? I think there's about 1,400 acres out in that area in North Hillsborough. What are your thoughts on how that might be managed by Metro? Because it's been stated by Senator Solomon, unless I misunderstood her, that this would come to Metro in the next legislative session.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking the question on Senate Bill 1586. And this is, as someone that has been in elected office, have heard very loud and clear from my constituents the concern about data centers because they use our resources at an extraordinary rate. They take up our land, and they don't bring jobs that help Oregonians, that help us actually live the meaningful lives that we want. And I understand why people are angry. I feel that same anger. And I'm really glad that you brought up the amendments on Senate Bill 1586, because one of the things that I've been hearing from folks, because Metro did decide to get engaged with Senate Bill 1586, I am the one that led the negotiations to remove the data centers and the tax credits to data centers, because I was hearing from my constituents. And I also asked the senator to make sure, so the original bill was looking to bypass the local process entirely, and by a state mandate bring 1,700 acres into the urban growth boundary. That is completely opposed to the way that Metro believes that land use should be led, which is a strong, transparent, community-led process that actually gives us the opportunity to say, this is the kind of jobs that we want, or this is the kind of housing that we want. And that bill was not doing that. When I decided to call Senator Solomon and say, I would like to see an amendment here, I was also wanting to shift the framework of the bill to make sure that if the state was going to bring in land, only 300 acres would come in immediately, and then 1,400 would go to urban reserves, which that is, you know, a local process that would give us much more certainty. I think a lot about the competitiveness, about the jobs that we need to bring here, and I'm really open to being, to having an open and accountable process with the community to make sure that, like you said, what kind of tech, what kind of jobs, what kind of manufacturing do we want to bring so that working Oregonians have an opportunity to have a living wage job. So those are all the things that I think about with respect to Senate Bill 1586, but I'm absolutely opposed to the data centers. I think we need to tax them way more than we do. They need to pay their fair share, and frankly, big tech is running away with our country and our state.
Thank you. Chris?
Great question, and thank you very much. As I stated earlier, I'm dead set against any unnecessary expansions of the urban growth boundary. I want to go on record as saying that. And I also want to point out that my opponent was in favor of a version of the bill to expand the urban growth boundary. And I think that the attempt that was made by the legislature was a dirty trick, really. It didn't take into account the will of the people. The will of the people actually came up and spoke, and that measure was defeated, thankfully. Again, I don't know what part of the word boundary people don't understand in government, but as the gentleman mentioned earlier, what does, you know, I remember when Metro started, what was their original mission, what was their charter, and to just expand that for industrial purposes was absolutely unnecessary and unfair to the people. I can see why the city of Hillsborough in particular would want that, because they generate tax revenue from those kinds of businesses. But that's what I would call a greenfield development, and it doesn't make any sense because we have to attach to that infrastructure, transportation, utilities, and all those things add on to the cost to the people or the taxpayer to do that. I'm not dead set against data centers. They're a necessary part of our economy. We don't want to shy away businesses, but we have brownfield developments. We have other areas. These are very low job types of businesses, and they could be put on reclaimed land in other areas of the metro region that might be a little bit more functional. So I never want to say no to any particular type of business. I think we need more business. The metro area becomes sort of a cemetery for businesses and for the dreams of homeowners, and I want to stop that. I want to encourage business, but it's got to be the right time, the right place, and the right opportunity. And certainly expanding the urban growth boundary and accelerating greenfield development for data centers is not the right solution. So I would oppose that.
All right, thank you. All right, 1625719.
Kind of on that note, in the last forum, I asked if there were any criteria or parameters that your colleagues would have when it comes to considering to expand your urban growth boundary. So, posing the same question to you, is there any reason that you would see that an urban growth boundary would be worthwhile for Metro? Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, great question. I do think that if that was the will of the people, I think ultimately the law of the land should be the will of the people. If it were something that were decided on by the community after a long and thorough vetting process, and we got lots of community input, and they said we need more of this, I would look at that. But I believe that Metro's role here is fundamental. Metro was originally formed to be an urban growth steward, to keep our state great by not expanding urban areas into agricultural areas. I think there's three things that make Oregon fundamentally a great place to live. One was the bottle bill that allowed us to recycle. The other one is public beaches, and the third is the urban growth boundary. So while I'm not dead set against expanding the urban growth boundary, it would take a long decision-making process. It would have to be supported by transportation and infrastructure that was affordable, and I would be very, very concerned about the tax implications of that to the existing homeowners. There's too many taxes, too many levies, too many bonds. Those are all just to translate money coming out of your pocket, and we'd have to have a very, very good reason to do that. And again, I believe in urban infill redevelopment. I believe in the catalyst effect. I think that we really need to recharge the urban areas of Metro in all three counties, and I think we can do that before we look at expanding urban growth boundary. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Juan Carlos?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is actually an opportunity for me to really distinguish myself from Chris, respectfully Chris, because I think that is the mentality and approach that has put us in this housing crisis, that makes housing so difficult to afford, that makes rent so high for people. And I am an advocate for a yes and address our housing crisis if we truly want this place to be, one where my daughter, where all of our kids can actually afford to belong here. That being said, Metro has a really clear methodology for how to do urban growth, and it has to be led by the community, by the city. A city by nature appeals to Metro and asks to do an urban growth expansion. Under my leadership as your Metro councilor, Metro oversaw 2 major urban growth expansions, one in Tigard and one in the city of Sherwood. And each time that the council had to consider that very difficult decision, I heard the candidates before talk about, once you urbanize a piece of farmland, that is a very, very challenging trade-off for our community to make. But I ask myself, are there going to be truly affordable opportunities for people? Is there going to be missing middle, duplexes, triplexes? Are these going to be opportunities for working families to stay here? Or are we going to continue to support policies that make it so that low-income people need to move out of the area and that this place only becomes one where only the rich and the wealthy and the well-off have an opportunity to live? And this is not just for young people. It's for old people, it's for seniors, it's for all generations. And again, I just wanted to take the opportunity to talk about that. When I say as your leader, I want to bring a new generation of politics, I truly do think that we need to have the courage and the bravery to talk about the hard things that need to change in order for us to lead our values. But that can only be done if we do that as a community. If we do that with a racial justice lens, with a justice and an equity lens, and that is the work I've done my entire life.
Thank you. 1625718.
You probably know this already, but my name is Michael. I have lived a lot of different places until I moved here about 30 years ago, and you couldn't pry me away from this place now. Between what you mentioned before, the beach bill, the urban growth boundary, these are things that don't exist in other places, believe me. And the other thing that absolutely blew my mind about this place is the number of parks. From our numerous city parks, county parks, regional parks that you guys are responsible for, state parks. We got a lot of parks in this state, and I like it that way. One of the things I would like that I'm interested in is ways to make those parks more accessible, maybe park to park, trail networks and so forth. And I'm kind of interested in what your feeling is for acquiring land to link up different parks so that somebody could enjoy one, move to another one, without even having to get in their car.
Juan Carlos?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you. As a Metro councilor, I've been very proud to be a champion for parks and our environmental work. There are so many examples that I would love to share, but I'll run out of time. Well, I'm happy to say that a regional trails master plan does exist to do just that. I'm someone that believes deeply in access, but I also, when I define access, I look at it much more than maybe even the traditional way, because I want access to be a way that meaningfully engages communities at every stage of the process of building a park. It could be from the first phase where a local government is asking, what do you want to see in a park or in a future acquisition? Or it might be in a procurement opportunity for a minority-owned business to go and help build the shelter there. Or it might be, shuttles to get, elders from the senior living facility to a park and to be able to walk in the trail. It might be an education opportunity for young kids to learn about botany and about the biology and the ecosystem and truly have people access. Because I agree with you, our nature, our natural environment is the single most beautiful thing about this place that we love. And if there's something that we're going to leave the next generation, it's clean air, clean water, and protected green spaces. So, as your Metro councilor, we thanks to the will of the voters, were able to pass a major Parks and Nature bond, which has helped us acquire almost, Metro's managing close to 20,000 acres of natural areas for the entire region. Just last year, we broke a record. We had 2 million visits just to metro parks alone. And that's places like Chehalem Ridge, out towards Gaston, one of the crown jewels of the metro system. And I would love nothing more than to continue to build incredible destinations that help our community, our young people, Oregonians, connect with what makes this the most special place in the world to live.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you, and that was a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. Our parks are definitely something that define us as a wonderful, wonderful place to live. And I think if we have an agreement tonight, it is that Metro has a role in developing the parks. But Metro at the same time has to stay in its own lane, because we have federal parks, we have state parks, we have county parks, we have city parks. Metro is in the process right now. They've just recently approved a park that's wholly in the city of Portland. So it raises the question of what is Metro's role, and are they overstepping thetheir bounds? Willamette Cove Park is in the St. John's area. It's been recently approved. It's going to cost taxpayers as much as $70 million. Now, if you're in Washington County or you're in Clackamas County, you're going to be paying into that development for a park that is in the city of Portland. So you really have to ask yourself, at what point does Metro have responsibility for parks and development, and what point do they not? So I'm a big supporter of parks. I'm a big supporter of preserving our ecological areas as much as possible. I'm a bird photographer, so I love to take advantage of all the great parks in the region. But at the same time, we have to think of things from a budgetary standpoint. We have to think of what are the priorities that Metro has, and what are your priorities? If it's a priority of the voters that we expand parks in the region, then that's something that we would certainly do, and I would certainly encourage us to do. But I would be very, very careful on levying a park bond on top of a zoo bond, on top of a housing bond, because all those taxes, levies, fees, and grants come, again, from your pockets. And people have a problem right now with affordability. And I just point to Willamette Cove as a perfect example of maybe a park that should be put under the purview of the city of Portland, just because it's wholly within the boundaries of the city of Portland and on the Port of Portland on the Willamette River. So would it be a great park? Sure. Should people from Washington and Clackamas County pay for it? That's a separate question.
Thank you.
Can I just chime into this? Okay.
We have allowed that to pass. You would get an opportunity to reply to whatever he says.
All right, great, thanks. I'm gonna stand and defend the Willamette Cove investment. That is an incredible partnership that Metro has led with the Columbia River tribes, with indigenous-led stewardship and ecological practices. Willamette Cove is on the Willamette River in the heart of the Superfund site. And as many of us know, the Willamette River has been poisoned for generations now. And what Metro and the tribes have decided to do in partnership with the Port of Portland is begin the environmental remediation process to remove all the toxins from the soil in Willamette Cove and return it to the people, return it to the tribes. And just because it's in the city of Portland, that is your park. Just like the park at Chehalem Ridge is someone that lives in Troutdale's Park. And I believe that our public assets belong to all of us as people. I just fundamentally believe in that, and when I talk to you about a government that is capable of doing big, amazing things, that is leading with our values, Willamette Cove to me is an example. Like, I will die on that cross if it comes to it, and I'm very proud of the work that we've done there. So, Chris, I understand the pushback and your criticism, but I just see it differently.
Would you like to respond?
Well, it just goes to one of the primary reasons I'm running. When you look at the budget, again, this is money that comes out of taxpayers' pockets. Many of the resources that Metro currently operates operate at a deficit. The zoo operates at a deficit. The Expo Center operates at a deficit. The Convention Center operates at a deficit. The arts centers operate at a deficit. At what point are we going to continue to operate a public agency at a deficit rather than share that burden? Again, it's wholly within the city of Portland. It's a Superfund site that's can be managed by other areas. And with all due respect, cleaning up a very small area of the Willamette River isn't going to solve the Superfund problem that we have on the Willamette River. It's a much bigger problem, and it's really, we're opening up a can of worms here. So it's a great idea. I'm sure it'll be a beautiful park. But again, $70 million is coming out of each and every one of your pockets on top of all the other bond levies and fees. And so I think we have to have somebody at least scrutinize that decision, because right now in Metro there's a unanimity of decision making. There's no one who will step up and say, well, maybe we should reconsider this, or maybe we should hold off on this project right now. So while I think it's a great idea to have more parks, I have to really look at the pragmatic function of how those parks are going to come to fruition.
Thank you. 1625726.
She always has the toughest questions.
So, in your introduction, Mr. Christensen, you mentioned safe voting, and I would like to direct this question to you first, if you would be so kind to answer. What is your definition of safe voting?
Okay, actually I said safe boating, so I think I didn't enunciate that well. But I like your question about safe voting. You know, it raises a lot of questions about voting here. And I'm old enough to remember walking down the street and going into my neighbor's garage and pulling the curtain and voting that way and handing it to a person. I think that voting accountability is very, very important in Oregon. And while I support vote by mail in some cases, I don't think it's the best way to conduct an election. Quite frankly, I don't think it's safe. And I think that there's a chain of ownership of those votes that has to be looked at and scrutinized. I'm not against voter ID. You have to provide voter ID to buy, or identification to buy cigarettes or alcohol, none of which I buy, but lots of many things that we do in our society. So to ask people to provide an identification to vote, I don't think impedes on the voting process, and I don't think it would be as big of a problem as many people think it would be. So I think that safe voting could include providing voter ID. Now, safe voting, just to answer the other part of the question, I was a voting advocate. I'm a lifelong voter on the Columbia River, and that's another great project that Metro has, a Gleason boat ramp. So I promoted voting life jacket safety. I believe that saving every life on the water that's possible is something that's very important. So part of my advocacy as a lobbyist was to promote life jacket safety. If you've got it, wear it. So that was safe voting is what I meant. So thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick.
Yeah, I would love to.
To respond to safe voting or voting.
Yeah, that was great. I'll start first with safe voting. Chris, thank you for your work on that. And as hopefully with the support of voters as your Metro president, I want to make sure that you don't just have the opportunity to vote, but also if you want to jump in the river, not have to worry about the toxins in the river, and make sure that it's safe and clean and healthy for all of us. On safe voting, listen, I believe in democracy. I think that Oregon has the gold standard for vote by mail. I think that we need to make it easier for people to exercise their vote. I think that this country and this state is at its weakest when Americans and Oregonians do not have the opportunity to participate in their civic process. It is why as a Metro councilor, I've worked so hard to, as I was talking earlier with the question around access, making sure that people see themselves reflected and represented, not just in their government and their elected officials, but in the investments that we are making to make sure that, again, this is a place that reflects our values, that we prioritize the thing that our working families ask us to do. So when it comes to voting, I believe in vote by mail. I believe in making and protecting our voter information, especially from a hostile administration in Washington, D.C. that wants to continue to target Oregon, because we're a state that won't bend the knee. And you can always count on me as a Metro president. I'm gonna stand for Oregonians. I'm gonna stand for our voting, and I'm gonna stand for the basic civil and human rights of all Oregonians.
I'm going to ask for a little bit more time. Does that mean that you would advocate or not voting registration the day of the election?
That's a great question. Kind of catches me off guard here. I think that as long as the voting process is secured, that voting up to and including the day of the election is okay. What I oppose right now is a system of a voting season where we have this open season and this long time to count the votes. It just opens the door for fraud in the system. As many of you know, to address Councilmember Gonzalez's point, The federal government had a lawsuit that they had to impose on the state of Oregon to clean 800,000 names off of the voters' rolls. So to say that the voters' rolls in Portland are secure and safe and absolutely perfect, I would take exception to that. So I really think it is important that we do everything we can to safeguard the elections, but at the same time give everybody the opportunity to vote. So I wouldn't be against being able to register to vote at the polling place as long as you provide proper ID to do so.
Would you like to comment on that?
I think I've said everything I have to say on this.
All right. Okay, well that's the, okay, yep, come on down. That's all the questions we got submitted beforehand.
Dale Feek again. I made public comment to county commissioners and to 4 city council and mayors about Trump and about his tyranny and his taking away abilities of a lot of people and killing a lot of people through his actions. And I know that there's a group in the county that's supporting your point of view, which I disagree with. May 1st, there's a boycott. And what do you think about that boycott? This is Forest Grove Indivisible, National Indivisible, National Boycott. What's your point of view of that? Even though I know you have tough decisions to make because you're going to have less money to do a lot of things and you're going to be major. You have to decide how you're going to propose a budget and make it work.
I think Gonzalez, I think we're starting.
Yeah, well, I can't remember if I mentioned this, but I'm the son of 2 immigrants from Mexico. My parents immigrated to the United States when they were teenagers. They actually were teenagers when they met each other. They met each other at Centro Cultural in Cornelius with St. Alexander's Youth Choir. They were practicing choir. And so I think a lot about, as someone that grew up in the city of Cornelius, which is one of the few cities in the state of Oregon that is a majority Hispanic Latino, almost 55% of residents in Cornelius are Hispanic or Latino. But growing up in a community where you walk around the block and you hear Spanish and you smell the carne asadas, to me it is an intrinsic thing that I have to live with every day in this administration's assault against immigrants and the people around the president, to be honest. And the reason I take so much offense and so much personal engagement in this is that I do think that the president and his cabinet does not believe that my family deserves the ability to exist here. And that is not something that I have the luxury of accepting. And I think that is fundamentally un-American, and I think I'm a pretty good American citizen as well. With respect to May 1st, I'm going to be in Salem, Oregon, marching with communities, calling on our governor, our legislature, and members of Congress for the May Day rally, continuing to advocate for the rights of immigrants, because immigrants are Oregonians, and Oregonians are immigrants. It's something that we can't run away from, and we can't turn an eye, especially to the violence that we're seeing from ICE on our streets, the attacks that immigration makes, and I worked very hard in the last legislative session to advance the immigrant justice package as well, and a lot of those, I spoke with every single legislator that represents the greater Portland area, and I say that because as your Metro Council president, I will work very hard, not just here, but in Salem every single day for you.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, great question. Very difficult subject in our community and in our society today. I first want to say that I wholeheartedly support the freedom, the justice, and the equality for every person in our society. Having said that, I find that there's a little bit of hypocrisy from the left, with all due respect to Indivisible, because I've seen many of their protest activities throughout the region. And while I do understand and appreciate and support people's First Amendment right to speak their mind, I think we have to take umbrage with the fact that it is a blanket solution. We need immigration and customs enforcement. If we didn't, this country would be a completely different place. Sovereignty is a thing in Metro, it's a thing with the counties, it's a thing with the cities. Places have borders for obvious reasons. In in Congress just yesterday, which was kind of funny, as many of you know, the King and Queen of England were in America, right? So the same people who 2 or 3 weeks ago were saying, no kings, no kings, no kings, were giving a standing ovation for 3 minutes for a king and a queen. So I think that the hypocrisy and the name calling has to stop. And so when you talk about, you know, the current administration as a tyrant or as any one of the number of, you know, comments that are made or the names that are called, you really have to look back. I mean, the prior administrations, whether it was Obama or Biden or Clinton or Bush, they've all had struggles with immigration. Now, has it been under the same lens? Absolutely not. Has it been managed the same way? Absolutely not. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. Has the current administration improved and made changes along the way? I think that they have. But we cannot deal without immigration and customs enforcement, and every country has laws. Every other country in the world has immigration laws. If you compare our immigration laws to those of other countries, you'll find that many of our laws are quite lenient.
Okay, so that's the end of the questions. Anybody else want to ask a question? Yeah, please come forward.
First, real quick about Trump. I wish that Trump was the same as the King of England. I mean, he wouldn't have any power, so, you know. Anyway, I live outside the Urban Growth boundary, and many people in Aloha and other places that aren't in an incorporated city, I just found a map, I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, they're not inside the metro boundary. So there's a big problem as far as I see where my question is, why isn't everyone in Washington County, Clackamas County, and Multnomah County inside the metro boundary? It doesn't make sense. So what are your thoughts about that?
Okay, I've officially lost track.
I'll take that question. So I would say be careful what you ask for, you just might get it. But there are unincorporated areas in each of the 3 counties, Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington County, that fall within the urban growth boundary and those that fall outside of the urban growth boundary. Helvetia is a good example. It's in Washington County. It's outside of the urban growth boundary. As you mentioned, Aloha is inside the urban growth boundary, but it is an unincorporated area. So Metro has a defined region. And it's, again, I wanted to say that Metro, under my leadership, would stay within its boundaries. It would stay within its lane. It has a certain area to manage, and it's not within the purview of Metro just indiscriminately to go and make jurisdictional decisions outside of that boundary. Having said that, there are areas that fall within. I live in the Tannisburg area, which is also an unincorporated area of Washington County, but still part of the metro region. So while there are parts of the metro region that are unincorporated, and those are the areas where Metro, I think, works best because they do sort of seamlessly cover the needs that aren't covered by other jurisdictions. But at the same time, having an extra level of government is something that we need to be very, very careful of, because Washington County manages much of what happens in my area as well as in Aloha. And so I think that the metro region is fine the way it is, and we need to be very, very careful. Again, this is a fundamental concept in Oregon land use planning, is staying within the boundaries of Oregon metro region so that we enjoy the changes that we see between agricultural and urban lands.
Thank you. Gonzalez?
Well, thank you for the question. You know, I'm going to address my answer in a few parts. I do think that one of our region's greatest challenges is actually our unincorporated communities, because they lack a city or formal local organizing structure through local government. I mean, their mayor is the county chair. And so when you see a community like Aloha or Bethany or different pockets of Beaverton, and you see communities that say, we want to accept missing middle housing or new kinds of housing development, it's actually very challenging to line up the infrastructure investments and things to do that. And so on a planning level, I think that's a big thing. I just want to wonk out a little bit and talk about incorporated areas. I think one of the most difficult things when it comes to our land use and urban growth systems actually is that the way that the state legislation is written actually, rural and agricultural communities don't have a formal role in the process. It's really, folks that are within the urban system are the ones that, lead the process, engage. You have to be a part of the city to lead that process. And it has unfortunately created sometimes a divide of you're inside the boundary or you're outside the boundary. For me, I would love to have a much more inclusive, comprehensive process that recognizes the value and the importance of agriculture as a sector and as an industry, but also as a much more clearly delineated role in those things. And separately, I'm someone that is a fan of Metro and the work that Metro does, and I do think that communities that don't live within the Metro boundary, there's a lack of transit access, there's a lack of the planning, a lot of the things that I think people would like to see. And so I think that's an interesting thing to think about, certainly for the future. But those decisions were made 50 years ago, before I was even a spark in my parents' eyes.
All right, thank you. All right, I'd like to give each of the candidates 2 minutes for a closing statement now. So we'll start with your turn, Gonzalez.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much to Indivisible for the opportunity to have us, and to Chris, it's always a pleasure to be able to share the stage and to debate with him. I'm running to be your Metro Council President. I've served this community as your Metro Councilor. It's been the honor of my life to be able to be a public servant, to do that. I mentioned in my responses to your questions, but also in sharing my vision, how I think that our region truly needs to tackle some of the most pressing challenges that I see, which are cost of living and affordability. Are our kids going to be able to afford to buy a home here, to grow up here, to live here? Are seniors going to be able to retire with dignity here? Two is opportunities and competitiveness. Are we going to be a place where people see themselves as opportunities? Are we going to, also be able to protect our clean and our water for the future? And I have the experience. I have extraordinary support from every corner of the region. I have 2 U.S. senators, 3 members of Congress, over 12 mayors supporting me, half a hundred city councilors from across the greater Portland area. I truly believe in the role that local government has. And as I mentioned to you, most importantly, I'm a new dad. And so I'm looking at this work through such a different lens, because it just matters so much to me. It matters so much to me, the work that we do, the services that we deliver. It has to be excellent. It has to, because the next generation, this generation is relying on us, but also the next. And Metro as a long-range planning organization, but also as a regional government that works on parks and garbage and recycling and tourism and venues, and some of the most important things that make this truly the most incredible and special place to live in the country. That is what I believe. That is why I'm running, because I love this region with all of my heart, and I would love to continue serving you as your Metro Council President. So please vote for me on May 19th. I will be here after to answer any questions. And again, muchas gracias.
Thank you.
All right, well, again, thank you, Indivisible.org, and thank you, Juan Carlos, for the robust debate, and thank you all for coming tonight to share and listen to the views expressed here tonight. In closing, I guess I would ask you a famous or oft-asked question in politics. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And if we stay on the same track that we're on now and have been for the last 4 years, where do you anticipate us being in the next 4 years after this? I plan to bring an independent voice to the metro region. I believe in the metro region. I believe in the people of this region, but I also believe that the people are taxed to the point where it's very difficult for them to really have hope for the future. And I am the kind of person who is going to step in and be that independent voice. I'm going to be that voice of dissent if necessary. I'm going to make Metro stay in its lane. I want to get Metro back on its original mission, on the original charter mission that Metro had, and I want to stop having Metro expand its footprint into areas that are either unprofitable or that are going to require more taxes. Specifically, I'm going to provide more affordable housing and a faster market, with market-driven solutions. I want to sunset the supportive housing services rather than re-up it in 2030. That's one of the important tenets that I have. And I'm going to look at some ways that we can creatively get Metro focused on the most important points of Metro and be a more pragmatic, solution-oriented, and functional government entity. Metro is sort of like the lettuce in the sandwich. Some people like the lettuce, some people don't like the lettuce. And a lot of people come to me and say, why do we even have Metro? And I think that's a fair question, and that's a question that I'll be asking throughout my entire tenancy as president of the Metro Council. So I'm here to, again, ask for your vote and ask for your support and the support of your neighbors. So thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Chris Christensen.
Thank you. Please give our candidates a round of applause.
Well, it's more of a comment and an appreciation as the member of the elections and legislative team of Indivisible Forest Grove. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to our moderator who has ably steered us. And you are welcome to have some of Forest Grove Municipal clean water as our treat.